I am heading the financial services cell of the Ministry of Railways, and to my right is this is Namita Malhotra. She is the Executive Director, Resource Mobilization of the Ministry of Railways. And first time in the annals of Indian Railways, we have gone for a project financing through outside governmental, budgetary support and outside railways internal resources. We have gone to debt financing to finance projects which have got high rate of return. We have cherry picked about 118 projects, which are basically they are doubling, tripling, and other major throughput enhancement works, which will facilitate railways to reach originating loading of 1.5 billion tons of loading by 2020. Today, Indian Railways, the freight, loading is about 1.1 billion, tons. We earn approximately, on about 140,000 crores from the freight business. This 118 projects which have been identified for this LIC loan, which is out of this $142 billion, about $25 billion is going to come from funding through a loan from LIC. It's basically a bond which will be raised by Indian Railway Finance Corporation on behalf of railways, and railways will invest these to these throughput enhancement works, which are basically related to those of the congested lines, those of the lines where the coal movement is not able to take place beyond certain point. Those are the lines where the investments are huge coal movement are expected to happen in the next 3-4 years. So this is one major component of this investment. The second major thing is that we have going to have a huge number of joint venture deal with the various state governments, which are, some of them are very overwhelmingly responding to have with hand-holding with railways, with 51% share of the state government and 49% with the railways, and the land ownership will be with the state government. And already we have signed MOUs with the state government of Maharashtra and also with the government of Odisha. More than about 14-15 projects have been identified for execution. They are all basically mineral ore movement to port connectivity related works, and then coal movement to the power plants and so on. These projects, even though highly remunerative, they are not happening for the simple reason that railway did not have the money through their own resources. Since the rate of return being so high, and the coal ministry is planning to triple, if not 2.5 times their production of mining of coal in the next 5-6 years. That is the present production level of 600 million tons of coal being mined here in India is expected to touch a figure of about 1.4 billion tons. Unless the rail infrastructure concurrently improve to carry this additional quantum of about 1 billion tons of coal, this movement cannot take place. Similarly, in the case of steel sector, which is also poised to grow something like 3 times. Presently, the steel production in the country is about 80 million tons, is supposed to touch something like 300 million tons. For this to happen and for the raw material for steel production to grow, we need to have the rail infrastructure. the present level of saturation of 120%, 130% level of saturation in those chosen corridors where freight predominantly move in Indian Railways, unless we triple them, quadruple them, and fifth line, sixth line happen, this movement cannot take place. This is a huge investment going to take place through this JV companies that is going to be formed with the state government. That is something like $20 billion. This LIC investment is also one of the fantastic terms ever negotiated perhaps in the recent past. It is something like GSEC plus 30 BPS is the interest with a 30-year tenor with the 5 years of moratorium for the interest and 10 years of moratorium for the principal repayment, and revisit the visit the GSEC every 10 years. And this cost of capital comes in less than about 8%, less than 8%. Whereas this project identified are all very conservative estimate with a zero present level of freight, assuming that there won't be any growth. They are and then factoring inflation for the cost, not factoring growth in the freight. They are expected to, with the sensitivity analysis reveal that they will be able to give a return of about 14% plus. Therefore, they are very well thought out investment. They are, unless this investment takes place, this 1.5 billion Indian Railway will not be able to touch. And a third major area of investment is the PPP. Railways had a PPP policy in place some time back, but some success rate was not very impressive. A couple of projects did happen, no doubt, but the kind of overwhelming response that we expected from the sector, from the private sector, did not happen. Therefore, after having a thorough, discussion with the trade and the investors, we have tweaked all these 5 models of PPP. One is called merry-go-round policy, MGR policy, what we call. Second is annuity method. The usual BOT method is third. And the fourth method is the customer-friendly model. See, in this model, what happens is that it is one of the very, innovative kind of a system where a lot of already 7-8 projects have happened for more than about 2.5 to 3,000 crores. That means about $500 million worth of projects have already been, MOU has been signed and work have already been started. In this model, what happens is, we say that, look, we borrow money from the government of India at the rate of 5.5% interest. And that is the capital which I've been doing project. I'm not able to do this project. There is a limitation from the government of India giving gross budgetary support to railways. What is that? About 35,000 crores per annum. They were giving 25,000 crores per year earlier. Now this year it is a predominantly, it is a phenomenally high allocation of 40,000 crores, but it is nothing compared to 8.5 lakh crores of investment that we are planning to do in the next 5 years. Therefore, what we said is that we will, you invest money, that money you invest will be returned to you along with the same 5.5% interest what I give to Government of India. In the process, the party get a line, it is a dedicated line for them. It will move from the mine to the power producing plant. It's a dedicated merry-go-round line. From mine it will come to the power plant and then go back. It goes in one direction, round and round, and then the rake of wagon and then earmarked crew. Therefore, there is no indenting, there is no waiting for a wagon. It is a kind of a guaranteed movement in a shortest possible time. And in the process, the line comes into being in 3-4 years, and then the entire investment by the party is returned to them along with the 5.5% of interest in the form of a freight discount. This has been overwhelmingly responded by one of the successful model of the PPP. Then fourthly is our own internal generation is about $14-15 billion which we anticipate to earn because of the freight growth that is going to happen. Even after meeting the debt servicing cost, we hope to do about $4 billion of surplus every year. That's for 5 years, it comes to like 16,000-17,000 crores. So add all these things together, about $42 billion of budgetary support, about $16 billion of internal generated funds, about $20 billion of state JV investment, about $20 billion of PPP investment, LIC loan of about $25 billion, and lastly, Indian Railway Finance Corporation fund our wagons, investment in our rolling stock. That is going to be about $14-15 billion in the period of 5 years. Therefore, in the next 5 years, all this put together, there is an investment plan of about $140 billion. It comes to something like 8.5 crores. This is the kind of the capex Indian Railway anticipate to do in the next by 2020. This year we have taken a very conservative, approximately $30 billion we have to 25 to $30 billion we have to spend in a year to reach the mark of 142 billion in 5 years. But being the first year, we will not be able to do 30 billion. We will be able to do something closer to 1 lakh rupees. That comes to something like $16 billion. So being the first year, and whatever we were not able to do this year, that would be compensated from the year 2, year 3, year 4. Not only this, there is a lot of empowerment, lot of facilitation, the contract management, and then the delegation of power. The entire powers of the ministry are now mostly is available with the general managers who have to execute these projects and make this happen. And the tenders, accepting power, has been fully with them. And then there's a lot of initiative, the power of digitization. Today, all the entire the scrap sale of Indian Railways is through e-auction. Nothing is procured manually, everything is through e-procurement. As far as the contracts are concerned, from the next fiscal onwards, it will be through e-tendering to make all these projects happen. Then one question that people ask is that your dedicated freight corridor is going to come in a big way. About 3,300 kilometers of new line is going to come in the western corridor from Mumbai to Dadri, and then on the eastern corridor from West Bengal, that is from Dankuni to Ludhiana. And how this investments, what you are doing in Indian Railways can be sustained when this DFC also parallelly coming. The point is that the investment that is the LIC loan, what we are investing is in areas where dedicated credit corridor is not coming. So it is not complementary. It is not competitive. It is only complementary. And dedicated freight corridor is concerned. It's by 2020 is both the corridors are expected to happen. Completed. It's about 80,000 crores of investment, about 16 billion US dollars, and we are going to spend something like 9 to 10,000 crores, 1.5 billion dollars this year itself. In the next, by the time we reach March 2016, this will happen. And then JICA, Japanese loan, and the World Bank loan are one of the two major sources through which this investment is being made. In addition to that, to make this freight happening in a very efficient, in a timetable basis, with a high, transit time, we have also, embarked on two major locomotive manufacturing plant of the state-of-art technology, FDI investment. You must have read in the papers that in one Madhepura and Marora are the two plants. One is the electric locomotive plant is going to be put up by Alstom. It's about investment of about 20,000 crores and of purchase, and then another 15,000 crores investment on a diesel locomotive manufacturing plant by GE in a place called Marora. So this has happened. It is now reality. Two huge Make in India initiative have already become a reality. And with these are all outside this 8.5 lakh. Outside is 142 billion dollars investment which I was talking about. Over and above is this investment. This broadly is the investment scenario that is going to happen, and then people. There's one major thrust area is that we have identified 500 tier 2, tier 3 railway stations out of the 8,000 stations in the Indian Railways, cutting across the whole country. 500 stations like Bhopal, Coimbatore, Kochi, Lucknow, Jaipur, these kind of cities, we are going to do the station development through PPP. These stations are located in the central district. It's a tremendous commercial potential, and the investment is going to entirely come from the private participation. And what is the trade-off? The upfront money will be used to make a world-class stations. These 500 stations will be developed in the best possible way, comparable to some of the best rail stations elsewhere. And in the process, we give the airspace and the space, huge land available that will be on a lease basis. It won't be sold, but it will be on a lease basis. This land development will take place. There's a huge potential available, and we anticipate that there will be overwhelming response to this PPP initiatives as well. So these are all some of the big ticket programs that has been planned, and very unfortunately, the Honorable MR had another program at 1 o'clock. So he was actually here till 12:30 to 12:50 because of this technical reason of, this could not happen. But essentially, this is what I want to share with you, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you.
So I'll open the floor to some questions. And can we have questions if... Any questions from the audience? Yeah. Just a moment.
So we got a feedback that you are trying to delegate the powers to general managers, but they are not prepared for it, and that's causing delay. They are not comfortable exercising these powers.
That is really not true, because traditionally, why these powers were not exercised, I'll tell you. A project, let us say 500 crore. This year I give 100 crore. He can't float a tender for 500, 600 crore, huge mega tenders, because next year whether that 100 crore will come or not, I do not know. If I finalize a contract for about 1,000 crore contract, let us say with L&T or mega company in India, they are not guaranteed. The gestation period is about 3 years. If the budgetary support did not happen, the internal generated funds did not happen, these projects will not happen, and then there's a huge arbitration dispute take place. This was the reason why this kind of powers were not exercised in the past. But today what happened, outside the budget, I have got 1.5 lakh crore available waiting for me. And LSE says that you can take the money, entire 1.5 lakh crore, today you can take it. There is no year-to-year budgetary regulation. There is a rail budget process through which I had to mop up this money. So today I want to float a tender for a 10,000 crore for a mega project. I can do that. That 10,000 crore is going to be spent 3 years. I can take it in 6 tranches of 3,000 crores every 6 monthly, 6,000 crores a year, and I can complete this 18,000 crore project in 3 years. And that kind of a flexibility was not there. In the EBRIF, extra budgetary resources, institutional financing was not adopted in the past by the Indian Railways. First time we have gone to the debt route to debt source for project financing. Even the highly returned projects were financed only through the traditional methods, where the competing demands from various socio-economic projects, new lines, connectivity projects to the backward areas. Along with that, these heavy throughput works were also competing. Therefore, there was no scope, and there was reluctance to exercise this power, because we will not be able to sustain this contract in the past. Now that it has happened, and in the coming quarter, that is the last quarter of the current year and thereafter, this is going to happen in a very big way, number one. Number two, traditionally we have been doing through traditional railways contracting system, GCC, General Conditions of Contract, which is not actually reflecting the market or the industry friendly, the contract condition. While FIDIC would be the ultimate, mode of contracting. First time after this EBRIF loan through LIC has been mobilized, we have now rolled out a policy called first time Indian Railway EPC, engineering, procurement, construction contracts are going to be now floated, and funding being no issue, and mega contracts are they can finalize without any problem. And also the estimate sanctioning power, the revised estimate sanctioning powers have been highly liberalized. With all this liberalization happening, it's poised for a mega growth. There is no doubt about that.
Thanks.
Sir, could you throw some more light on how exactly you're going to commercialize these stations that you talked about in Tier 2 and Tier 3 cities? And I just want to put into context that if you look at what our track record of commercializing our airports are concerned, right? If you look at the level of commercialization of any Indian airport with, let's say, any international airport of repute like Changi or Dubai or any other something, the level of commercialization that we have achieved is various levels lower. Now, even after adjusting for the fact that our incomes and all that and disposable incomes may be lower than as compared to the other countries. Have we drawn these lessons into, let's say, what we're planning to do for the railways? And could you go into some degree of detail as to how exactly we will be able to really mine this as a commercial opportunity?
We have our own PSU, extra, rail development, RLDA, Land Development Authority. Then Land Development Authority has already achieved a fair degree of success in, commercializing the land, surplus land available with the railways. And this is our extended arm of, like IRFC's extended arm of our financing arm of railway. This is our land development wing. Then RLDA is now, the contours of this thing has been now already defined. We are going to shortly upload and then elicit comments from the public and other interested people. And basically it is that, we will, the passenger coming and going, that will be cordoned from this commercial exploitation. And these stations at best are one story or maybe two stories, some of them. But the potential in these areas are humongous. And now in and around the station also there's a huge, landmass available unexploited. If it's no doubt it's a brownfield project, it is not a greenfield project. There are issues will come, the water, additional water resources, power, car parking. Therefore, we have taking inputs from our, similar experience, successful stories that happened in other sectors in India and also from abroad. And this policy is almost in the final stage of tweaking. Shortly, we will be uploading and then eliciting feedback from the people at large. I forgot to tell you one thing. In railways, we don't have today a regulatory mechanism, whether to determine the fare and freight or there's a level playing field for a PPP kind of a thing. The contractee himself is the adjudicator. He himself is the ombudsman. Railway is the pun party. In the case of a dispute, railway itself is the arbitrator. That is one of the things which has been resented upon. So when we want to do this kind of a smart 5-city development, we need to have a proper regulatory mechanism in place so that the promised, the clauses which has been, incorporated in the agreement at the beginning stage are honored throughout the gestation period without iota of dilution. And therefore, regulatory mechanism is also being a concept paper, and this is also being finalized. This will be uploading that also, in addition to this, the land policy, land development policy. Both are expected to be, in the public domain very shortly. They are in the final stage of this thing. In fact, we have already had a couple of informal discussion with the stakeholders, but it still is not in the public domain. Sooner it will happen. Once that happens, the kind of concerns that people will have can be posed, and how a typical class can be interpreted, or how it can, facilitate or mar the progress, those things can be addressed, and then we will have a kind of a fair, like a P-BRID conference, like we have a contract condition, item by item we discuss and then tweak it and take the inputs from the bidders, and then we finally float the tender. Similarly, these policies also will be not unilaterally decided, it will be done in consultation, and rather the consent with the stakeholders at large.
So if I might just comment here, all these things like having a land development authority which is under your control and all that are all enabling conditions. However, that's not sufficient by itself. What you need is a huge marketing initiative to persuade various commercial enterprises, let's say like for a Bata to set up a shop there, or a McDonald's to set up a shop there, or people or items or people who sell things of mass consumption, which is really what the railway is all about, to sell large bustling establishments so that it becomes really a marketplace, right? So, and that's the analogy that I wanted to compare between, let's say, a Changi and a Delhi or a Bombay airport. The level of commercialization is completely missing. There are a few odd perfume shops and a few odd cigarette shops and so on and so forth. And nothing like, when we go to Changi, etc., you actually go with the serious intent of shopping. You buy laptops there, you buy computers there, you buy shoes there, and so on and so forth. Now, maybe we need to scale down. Maybe it's not going to be a laptop destination because we're talking about largely middle-class travelers. But still, whatever the equivalent goods are there and what people are aspiring, that should be the focus in terms of making a commercial bustling space, and not just concentrating on enabling conditions like clearing the land and creating the infrastructure and so on and so forth.
Clarify. See, point well taken. See, railways will, give the complete, there will be concessionaire, and he would be given a kind of a free hand. And railways' role is that make it available for the large, span of time, and then take the money upfront and be done with it. And that money would be used for improving the station. Thereafter, the kind of structure, there will be certain kind of parameters that there cannot be, the passenger movement and the rail infrastructure, so long as they don't interfere, what you can come up with, and how, what are the kind of facilities that can be put in, and the kind of the passengers need not be the only, the client. It can itself be a marketing place. People need not come to the station to go to that place. It can be independently, it can outside the station, there can be entries and exit. And that is the private sector's initiative. Railways certainly will not do this marketing and what will be sold there, what type of shops, sizes. This is purely with the concessionaires look out, and basically the space would be made available, and thereafter it will be the completely to the ingenuity and the imagination of that concessionaire, and how the realtor is going to package his what type of development he wants in station to station, and then entry exit, then probably vertical car parking, and then from the parking slot he can go to the straight away to that level of the floor, and so on and so forth they are talking about during our informal kind of a thing. So I would not be able to comment in detail at this juncture because it's pretty nascent stage. But the thought is vibrant, but the nuances are not clear. As I said that once this is, we have been talking to the major players in the field who are interested in this kind of a thing. Once that is clinched, then we will be come to the public. Then this kind of questions can be more focusedly answered.
Thank you.
Sir, I have, this is Anish Damania here. I have one question. So we have seen the fuel prices have been coming off, and this is one of the major costs for railways. How do you view that, and how does that help you in terms of your plans going forward? And what kind of savings are we expecting to come about, besides the budgeted savings which you already have said?
Our traction predominantly is from electric energy and diesel. while large scale, electrification are on the anvil. When I said this LIC loan of, this $25 billion, quite a large number of electrification will be on that. If you compare a diesel vis-a-vis the electric in traction, there is no comparison. It's a 3 times, 4 times, the rate of return is something like 20-30%, 25%, 30%. So electric energy is, even if it is, till recently, till this, our minister, started, power purchase agreements and then, tapping cheaper electric energy sources. You must have read in the paper that we have now finalized a couple of agreements where the unit rate is much lower than what rate at which we have been purchasing from the state government. While as such, even at 6 rupees per unit, electric traction has been advantageous to us compared to diesel. But then with this kind of unit rate coming down, it is huge savings are expected. Number one. Number two is that there are other, big solar initiative on tapping the solar energy and wind energy are also, initiatives are on, and then that's also in the offing. Thirdly, first time, we have created a directorate called Environment Directorate, and where various energy efficiency measures, for instance, a locomotive driver, if it is, certain amount of electronically driven certain fuel saving machine through technology like diesel miser and so on, are also in a big way is being thought about. Then while the diesel prices have come down over the years, but still even after that electric traction is considered to be very high. Thirdly, we are also thinking in terms of, we buy the diesel and store it, and upfront we pay to the oil companies and then we use it. Now, we are also thinking in terms of why can't these, these depots be with the oil companies, and as we use the diesel, like in a typical petrol pump, you pay as you diesel is poured into the car. So why my inventory should be so huge? So we are even thinking in terms of curtailing the inventory carrying cost, and as you pay electronically to the company as you use it. These are all some of the innovation that is on the card. So railways are 6 times more energy efficient than road, is environment friendly traction. So we try. That is why this focus on huge investment on freight movement is and the dedicated freight corridor are being planned. With the timetabled freight trains, with the transit time reducing significantly, when I run a freight train at 60 kmph instead of 30 kmph as it is on today, then we hope to, and we run it with a guaranteed kind of a transit and a long lead. We are very confident that quite a chunk of traffic will come back to rail from road.
So one more question as a follow-up of what you said on the dedicated rail freight corridor. Now, there is a huge investment which has gone into this space, and you will be suddenly building up a lot of capacity. Could you talk to us as to how you're expecting to price your services, and what is the fundamental pricing policy?
Very fantastic question. Today, as you all know, that my passenger fares are very too low, much less than the cost. Every 1 rupee I spend a passenger, we earn about only 52 paise. So almost 50% is the thing, whereas the freight is so high that it actually cross subsidizes. So when we have dedicated freight corridors, definitely there are two major costs we have to be factored. One is the track access charge. The Indian Railway will have to pay a track access charge to this dedicated freight corridor company. That track access charge will cover their O&M cost and their actual maintenance of the fixed assets, and also the debt servicing cost. As I mentioned, the two major loans from JICA for the Western Corridor and from World Bank for the Eastern Corridor, those debt servicing, they are very cheap credit, but they will be serviced through this debt, track access charge. So track access charge has to cater for these two things, the O&M charges and this access charge. And after that, if you factor a profit of about 10%, 15%, then that would be the kind of a freight that will be pitched in. And that freight, whether it will be closer to the present level of freight or it will be much, much lower than that to attract the road to rail and etc. Too early to comment on at this juncture. We are working on that. But once you are able to run a train in a dedicated way with a timetable process, with the transit time much lower than road time, and then absolutely safe, no question of safety being in a good strain. That should be a very big advantage. Notwithstanding the freight factor alone, we will be able to do that, and then I'm sure that freight would be fixed at a competitive level to utilize the constructed asset. Certainly, it will not be allowed to go underutilized.
Thank you, sir. So I think we are through with our questions. Thank you very much for being with us and taking out your time. Thank you. I thank.
I'm sorry, we are disappointed you, because our minister was actually there at 12:30, but somehow for some an inexplicable reason this was not working. But therefore, please bear with us for that.
But still, thank you very much. I think it was a very useful presentation. I think we are very happy that you were there with us and could make your time available. So thank you very much once again.
My pleasure. Thank you very much.
Yes,
Thank you, Mr. Rajiv Lal.